that would help me. So put our guest teacher on the big screen. So dear friend Guma, very warm welcome to Chi Channel. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to be here because I've, learned so much from all the other teachers that have spoken on here and just so appreciated the Chi Channel Fritz.
Yes, yes. It's good to meet you. And as an introduction, Guma, can you please share with us what brought you to Jineng Qigong? Why the interest and when?
Actually, yeah, it began with, I think, well, it began with two different books. One, Roger Younka's book, who had a chapter about the medicineless hospital in it, his Healer Within book, and two, the second one was the 101 Miracles. And I hadn't read all the stories of the miracles, but I had read the introduction. And I had stopped short on the page where the 8 verses were. And it just claimed me. It just like, this is so cool. All the essential things are right here, And so I've photocopied that page and used it as a handout in my Qigong classes. And I think for my own sake, and maybe for all of us, I'd like to start with the 8 verses and, really maybe we can all sing them together or something because, I don't know, I just always like to start at the beginning.
Yes, sounds great.
And since I was thinking I would be talking about we have it laid out a little differently. I keep looking. I've given my original, that edition that I had of 101 Miracles, I gave it away to somebody. It was one of the very early editions because it must have been like 96 or something like that, 97. And I've looked in like the Spanish translation and they don't have that page in it anymore. They didn't do that introduction the same way. But maybe we're all muted, right? Except for me. Okay, so I think we should all, if it's fine with you, I mean, I just like belt it out, sing it from your heart, and I'll sing it from my heart, and hopefully the sound will be not too, will be wonderful, and we can start
Right.
there.
I can unmute everyone and we can sing it together.
Oh, it'll be jumbly if we do that. Although that might be fun. That might be fun. I think let's keep it a little more serene. So let's find ourselves in some nice posture. Take a breath into the core of your being. Notice how you are so beautifully connected with the whole of all of us and the universe. The universe in all of its form and its formlessness. All of its potential. And thinking back into our hearts, into the story of Dr. Pang and the Medicineless Hospital and the origin of these words, we offer them as a way to begin our time together and to activate that energy within us that has traveled through our practices, our teachings, and our cultivation journey. Din Tian Li Di Xin Song Yi Chong Wai Ji Ne Ji Xin Song Mao Gong Inyen buchi shenzu tai kong sheni zao ti zhou shen rong rong zhou shen rong rong zhou shen rong. Noticing how the energy in yourself and in our field has shifted, how it's harmonized. There's different qualities present now. Notice the merging between our individuals, and the Hunwan Chi has opened up new pathways and feels even more alive within us. Hola. Hola. So the story goes that it was like, sounds like a Christmas story. It was the night before midnight, went all through the house. It was right at the end of 1999. And I'd been having this piece of paper in my classes with the 8 verses and looking at it and reading it and knowing it, but had never connected beyond a little bit of knowledge about the idea of the Medicine-less Hospital in that story. I had been engaged with Chi field sorts of ideas and applications through I am a Quaker, and we worship in silence and sit and wait upon the Holy Spirit to work through us to bring any messages or any guidance for that period of worship, or our actions in the world, or whatever's uplifting. So I was used to collective group spirit and collective energy and my role in that, and had taken some of those thoughts that I had from Quaker meeting and understanding collective consciousness into my classes already. And I think that's why the 8 verses resonated so strongly with me without even knowing much about beyond that. So when I got to end of 1999, I started my Qigong journey in 95. End of 99, by that time I'd been teaching in the prison system for 3 years. And I was also just initiating a journey, professional journey as a hospital and hospice chaplain. So I was, most of the days of the week, I was helping people die and helping people with trauma. And then my break, my break would be to go and do my class up at Folsom Prison and be with people that were healthy and you know, and alive in spirit and work with on this different level. But the prison system had grown. My relationship with the prison system had gotten pretty twisted. I had gotten way more angry than I wanted to be. And I was very frustrated about a lot of things I was seeing and bearing witness to. And then I was overall, I was on a learning curve with how to work with clearing out my own energy after being with people in trauma. So I felt I was pretty messed up, and yet I was doing good work that I wanted to keep doing. And so I needed to find a solution to support me. And whenever I was practicing the forms I was teaching, I would go into teacher mind, and I was thinking about how to break them down, or thinking about the last class or whatever. And I just wanted something that was just for my restoration. And I took 101 Miracles up to our mountain cabin at that Christmas week. And that Christmas week was also Y2K. And it was the turn of into 2000. And people were stupid. People were really crazy about, how life was going to fall off the edge of the cliff at that turn of the click of the clock. It was really dumb. And it was like totally frustrating for me, that energy in the world that was so stupid. You remember that?
Yeah,
Really?
absolutely. I work in IT, and we had to change all the code, and people thought that planes would fall off from the sky at 12 midnight.
It did, and just the level of stupidity in the world was really irritating for me too. And it's like, what can I do? How can I contribute to some more sanity? How can I help de-escalate what's going on with this craziness? And I finally read through the whole 101 Miracles again, and really ate up each story, and just, it was so clear to me, this is exactly how you do it. You have 100% love around you all the time. You practice all the time. You have a community of people that are having the same purpose. You've got a leader that is brilliant and, guiding in magnificent ways with new insights and from a whole new paradigm. It's like, wow. So I just really opened up to the whole story that was going on in Zen and Qigong, and it's like, okay, that's how Qigong really heals. I was doing sort of stress reduction, feel good, lower your blood pressure kind of classes in the hospitals that I was teaching at. And that was great. And people were benefiting. But like this bigger story of actually healing tumors and shifting, getting up out of wheelchairs and that kind of thing was like, whoa, okay, that's how you could potentiate this story I was starting to play with stress reduction. And so I got so inspired that I decided to teach myself out of the photos in the back of the book. And all there was a series of little black and white photos across the page. And I figured it out, because I can do that kind of thing pretty easily. And I clumsily got my form memorized, and I did a year gong of lift you up, port you down every night from my my doing it. And I learned later, it was a couple years later that I actually found Eva Liu, who's Frank Chan's wife, who's Luke Chan's brother, and connected with the Chans and Chi Lil, and went to some workshops, and I actually figured out what to do behind my head, and some of the other things that I had never done, and I think my form was, it was okay, but it was doing the trick. It didn't need to be perfect to do the trick. I was catching the encoding. I knew exactly where Senji Palace was, even though I had never heard of that name, because I had done this, in each time. And, the form is so encoded with, you don't need to have that. It's there. It's there. So that was my story of starting with getting initiated. So it was very different than most people's stories who find a teacher or journey off of a healing need. I just have been a Qigong junkie since I first found my first teacher, and it's just, I don't know, it's part of my, it's something deep in my essence
Yes.
that is Qigong. It's not from illness or any other particular need that I have been driven here.
Yes, yes. That's a good point. I think it's fair to say that most people are attracted to Yunnan Qigong because of some health issue. They're trying to fix a health issue. So you met uh, Frank Chen's wife and you started studying. And then I read that in 2007 is when you met Master Ming Tong at a retreat and you started working for him.
Yeah, I'd actually met him once and taken a beautiful day-long teaching that he did on the Qi field in like 2002 or something. I was at the East-West Conference teaching, doing a presentation on my prison teaching.
Yes.
And he was there, and so I met him and did a one-day with him. But he was living quite far away. I mean, well, 4 or 5 hours drive. And I got up to one weekend with him in 2005, but it wasn't until 2007 when he started coming down to the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Sacramento, so the Bay Area is only 2 hours for me.
Yes.
So that was doable. I caught every weekend I could, and once I realized that he didn't get to the deep stuff that I was really hungry for until the last couple of hours of a weekend,
Right.
I realized, oh my gosh, I got to get to retreats. So
Yeah.
I kind of rearranged the family budget and, got to more retreats. And then I learned how I could manage that by volunteering to do all of his audio files. And so then I got all of his audio files and just listened to them constantly when I was driving up and back to the prison or other things. And so I self-studied a lot, not just going to an event with him, but I was listening to his recordings all the time.
Nice. And then you helped develop Ming Tongs. I mean, he has a tremendous online teaching course and also teacher certification. Can you share with us a little bit?
Yeah, and there's some of my friends from it here online. What was happening is I encouraged him because of what I wanted, to do more advanced weekends.
Yes.
And we got started doing those. And then he said, oh, this is so good. We have to require this for all the teachers.
Yes.
And he had a teacher program then it was a week retreat of teacher certification. And I said, yes, but it's not fair that people, like we had a group in Colorado that was active, and it's not fair for them to have to pay to fly out and get and everything. We need to have requirements that are accessible to everybody so I said, how about we record you during the weekend, and then we make the recordings available for anybody that wants to be in the teacher certification program so that they too can meet the requirements. And so we started sort of from that angle, and then quickly it became, we've got these things packaged up. We can, more people can take advantage of it that are further away. And it does, we were so hungry to move off of the local time and space constraints of having to come to one particular place for one particular weekend. And we wanted to open up the teachings much bigger, and that was the natural way. And at the time, this was very early in online course development. There wasn't many other people doing it, and even our software was we were driving our software writers with our need, and we had very heavy audiovisual components. And I would take all the teachings that he gave, and then I take the transcriptions and I'd rewrite them, so that they were clear to read. And we did a wonderful job, but we kept moving on very quickly from one thing to another because that's his style. He just keeps updating all the time.
Yeah, just tremendous online presence. Guma, may I ask you about Yunnan Qigong and spirituality? I read that very early on, you said that you found your spiritual path and your background as a Quaker. May I ask, in in Christianity, there's a Trinity. There's God the Father, God the Son, and then God the Holy Spirit. Do you equate Hunyuan Chi to the Holy Spirit? Is that how you?
It's interesting. When I was training to be a chaplain, we had to write a theology paper. And I was freaking out because Quakers barely have anything written. I'll always share written is just people's experience because it's a very experientially based tradition. And we don't like have creeds and theologies and all that. I mean, people spend plenty of time in the Bible, but they don't have all kinds of extra stuff to. It's about what you can experience, what you've experienced. So I was a little bit and so the person that was in charge just kept working with me saying, what is it that you really know? What is it? What is your personal theology? And I said, well, what I know it from is from my Tai Chi practice. And he goes, okay, do that. And so I had an amazing weekend of, connectiveness with what my deeper self and everything, and wrote this paper about the trinity of the flow and the formless and the form, and how the everything, the omnipresent, the pure neutral source energy was equivalent to my version of God. Although I didn't really I didn't try and make actual equivalence. I just talked about what I felt. And the form is God incarnate. You could say Christ, or any of us that are manifesting at our highest possible levels in our incarnate selves. And the flow, you gotta have the flow in between the form and the formless, all the transition, all the hunhua, all the merge and transform is that Holy Spirit at work. The oscillation between form and formlessness, the frequencies, the vibrations, the resonance, the coherence, all these things we know about energy and how energy works in a functional or dysfunctional way. It's all contained. Yeah. And it made me, it was very easy for me to be in a neutral position with families that I was helping in the hospice work or the hospital, because I didn't need to have a Christian hat on or a Muslim hat on or a Jewish hat on. I had this neutral hat on from my experience with the Hunyuan Chi, and it could go in any direction depending upon the purpose of what I was hearing in the conversation. If there was a purpose to heal a certain relationship or to overcome a certain fear, I could just take that pure energy into that situation and help the family work with whatever difficulty they were in the middle of. And it didn't, and I was also really comfortable with silence and listening for what was going to emerge from the still point of people's hearts. And so the people that hired me were very comfortable that I could, because most of the people that needed chaplains were the unchurched, the people that didn't have any kind of religious background and were kind of wandering around lost in those moments of dying. And they needed someone that could shapeshift.
Right. Yes, great. Guma, now you're a Qigong teacher. May I ask what sort of practices are important to you, and like what is your daily practice? Like what sort of practices do you emphasize?
Yeah, I am continually swallowed up in the teachings, I think, even more so than the physical practices. Although I've had many times, it's been 23 years. So, especially in my earlier years, I did lots of gongs and lots of work with the forms and love them and love teaching them. and yet, I mean, I spend a lot of my time listening to teachings of different people, and I call that practice. I
Yes.
spend a lot of time with my muse, working on doing poems, or just reflecting on things, doing lachi sessions with whatever's I'm
Yes.
nervous, I'm anxious about. And right, in October and November, I was in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and I was teaching for the first time on my own. I mean, I taught plenty when I was with Ming Tong, but I was under his umbrella.
Right.
And now I was, and I was challenging myself with this great opportunity of teaching
Mm-hmm.
in a different language. And oh, I have such respect for so many people that are
Yeah.
doing this in their non-native language.
Right.
And so at that point, most of the fall and stuff, I was spending every hour I could with all the YouTubes online that were in Spanish, that were talking about theory or teaching a form, and
Right.
practicing with them, and seeing how I could, and writing out in Spanish what I might want to say about, Huang Chi theory or something like that.
Right.
And just working on those levels, which certainly the content level I've had many, many times, but to come at it in a different language gave it
Yes.
such freshness and newness for me. It was exciting, and I look forward to doing more of that.
Yes.
And I'm I'm looking around right now. My 2019 is pretty open, and I'm listening to what would take me to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of practices and cultivation would take me to the next step. And not quite sure what that is, but it'll happen, and it'll grow out of the conversations I have with people. I'm going to be doing some mentoring groups, and I'm sure that we'll pull together some pieces of the journey. And just to stay ahead of the group
Yes.
is practice for me. If we're going to do a unit on the 8 verses or chi field setting, then I get to review all of my review what's gone on before. I mean, this past week for me, oh my goodness, I've been getting up every morning early, writing, and just stream of consciousness
Yes.
writing. What is it that I know that I might want to say here this morning?
Yes.
And it's been so rich. I think I have a book on the chi field
Oh,
written.
great. Yes. And
So
then
now,
you're starting online classes as well. I read, I think starting next week. Can you talk about those?
yeah. One of the things I discovered in Mexico, I think sometimes you have to get out of your own environment to
Mm-hmm.
sometimes hear what you're worth. And the way I was teaching lift you up, porch you down, or other things, was different than they were used to.
Mm-hmm.
As natural, I came through a different primary teacher. I mean, Ming Tong teaches differently than most of them had studied with Carl and Helen in Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the form was actually the same, but the intonations and the way we look at it and the way we choose what way to look at it, and how to it, it was they were like, there were so many gifts that they were getting. And um and so I decided, well, and most all of my material that I created through Ming Tong is Ming Tongs. I was
Mm-hmm.
an employee, and it was an incredible opportunity and a incredible journey with him for 10 years. But
Mm-hmm.
they're his materials. And now, so I said, okay, well, maybe if I do a class Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings, do Tuesdays with Lift You Up, Port You Down, Thursdays with Body Mind,
Mm-hmm.
and take Wednesdays to explore all these Tai Chi balls that I love doing, and spiral twisting, and everything that I need in my older body to
Yeah.
and keep it going. Um, Maybe that would be good. I'm not committing to the whole week, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
committing to those times, and I can just offer what I natively offer
Yeah.
about these things, and give it out in a way that if I can make recordings and people can take in what I know that might be different than the teacher that they've studied with.
Yes. Yes. Nice. And
So
yeah.
I wanted to give it a try. I'm not used to. I'm a little nervous about locking myself down to days of the week and hours of the day, but
Right.
I decided to go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great medium, and you have posted your email address in chat, and then I also posted your website link in the Facebook group. So if anyone is interested, they can
Yeah,
contact me.
I can put up the basic information about the classes if you want. I have it
Yeah, that would be
ready
great.
to
Yeah,
add. Okay.
sure.
All right. Maybe
And
Stephanie can slap
yeah,
that in
and
to the
one
for people.
yeah, one final question I have, Guma, is a couple of years ago you went to China to study and train with Teacher Wei and his group,
Yeah, this summer.
yeah, Dao Hearts. And may I ask, like, what was your experience like? How does Teacher Wei's teaching differ from Ming Tong, or is it just different flavors? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's mostly different flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And different personalities,
Yes.
of course. Um, the Yeah, as I was listening to Wei teach on energy and information, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard this lecture before. This must have come right from their 2-year training program.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was amazingly similar. And then I've picked up other Zen and Qigong materials by different teachers and stuff, and I'm
Oh,
going, oh, okay, I know that talk.
mm-hmm.
I've transcribed that. I've rewritten that. I
Right.
mean, it's like I'm so impressed, and it inspires me how the teachers of Dr. Pang have stayed so dedicated and so
Mm-hmm.
loyal and so keen on passing through his transmission. And
Yes.
they each have their different styles, and up until November of last year when I retired, I stayed very focused and very loyal to Ming Tong and didn't wander around looking at other things on the websites because, well, I believed in that was that period of time for me to just go deep and
Sure.
stay
Mm-hmm.
concentrated with one teacher. And now I'm springing out and doing the opposite. And I really have a lot of respect for the whole community that
Yeah.
way. And it's not hard to do. The teachings are so profound, and we can
Yeah.
all have our own personal mark on them without
Mm-hmm.
changing them. But I'm really so yes. Now, the teacher Wei is also sort of moving. He's so involved right now with the Minj Way, which was
Yeah.
a piece of what strongly attracted me to him. And Ming Tong's going to be uh, doing a pure consciousness series this year too. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think it seems to be very rich in the field to sort of move this embodiment work into the pure conscious realm, and to
Mm-hmm.
take pure consciousness, take a cultivation and stabilization of our human experience as our
Yes.
true selves back into our body. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like a bigger pulse that's happening in the field. Um, so that's exciting. And I had prepped with a lot of Minjwei meditations and stuff
Mm-hmm.
before I went. So I was most hungry for that. And of course, I was learning level 3 material, which Ming Tong had taught here and there and sprinkled around some straight leg sitting and some. He's I don't know if everybody knows, but he's very big on sound healing and uses
Mm-hmm.
this sounds part of level 3 from the very beginning of his trainings.
Yes.
So I was very familiar with some of the level 3 form in terms of the sounds, but the movements and mudras were
Mm-hmm.
new and different for me.
Yes, excellent. So great. I like to turn it over to you if you like to begin your teaching and then a practice. It's all yours.
It's all my help. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let me see where I'm at here. Um, So let's collect ourselves. I need to collect myself back inward and kind of reaching out to you all, telling my story. And now, as part of my own journey, I need to sink back inside and notice the aliveness of the field all around us. And one of my longest threads in Zen and Qigong, one of my longest journeys, I think, is around understanding and exploring the role of the teacher in organizing and building the chi field. In 2005, before I had even, I hadn't even gotten involved with Zen and Qigong yet. I was studying with a teacher named Roger Yanka and going through his teacher training program. And we were asked to write a paper. And so I wrote a paper on how teachers, about the chi field, and how teachers should, or not really should, but what the opportunities were for them to take responsibility for organizing that level of their class energy. And I did all the research I could about group. I did a lot of research, and a lot of my information was coming from group dynamics kind of activities, as well as some of the different spiritual traditions that use the collective field purposefully in their worship. And things like Rumi and Hafiz and these kind of poets that use the field so strongly. And then also the little bit that I was able to find on the web. Well, I don't even know if we had the web that strong back then, but researching and found out a few things about the Medicineless Hospital. So it wasn't that much beyond 101 Miracles that was published over here in Roger's small chapter in his book. But I made my effort, and it was my question even back in 2005. And one of the things that was made present to me about the way that the chi field builds strongly, that I think I'd like to begin with here, is got through Ming Tong and him telling stories about what it was like at the Medicineless Hospital and during their 2-year training. And that was that all the other teachers in the room would be consciously and directly amplifying what the speaker, whoever was guiding the group in that moment, was doing. They didn't kick back and be a participant and just receive and see the speaker as, well, that's the current one who has his turn up there. I might say it differently, or they weren't having these kind of thoughts of being separate from the speaker. They joined around the edges of the room or from wherever they were, and they purposefully saw the speaker within the field as speaking from the field, and the field was speaking through the speaker, and that they were a conscious part of that amplification and the stabilization of that teaching within the room full of all the participants, or I suspect, those wonderful pictures of all the participants out on the fields, that they took their role as an amplifier of the field and as a support of the person speaking. And so I think it's fun to experiment with these kind of ideas. So your role today, if you choose to accept it, is to sit and listen. When you're listening with me, is to think of your students. I'm not sure all of you are teachers, but think of your community. If you have students, your students, and take what you're receiving here through the field and through words and through whatever transmission is coming that you're identifying with, and think it forward or think it back into your experiences with your students, so that we're really working with the whole context of the field so we're not just people listening to another person, and that you're visualizing and seeing that the field is flowing through me, and adding your heart's intention and your experience with chi field organizing and setting into the dynamic, so that points that you might have said in this talk are in the field for everybody else too, even though that I didn't say them, but they're sort of alive there because you've offered them to the field. And certainly if you want to later email me and we'll talk about some of these juicy ideas. But that dynamic of moving away from being separate people, moving away from being all of you listening to me, and moving into the collective field and being really conscious of how the Hunyuan Qi is circulating and pulsing through us is, a real important step. It may not be step one in organizing the Qi field, but for those of us that have the maturity and experience with this, I think it's an important one for me to articulate and for me to gather your support around. Good. Thank you. I can feel it. As I've wandered around lately through different teachers, and even as I've watched Ming Tong over the years, and before that with the Chans, and there's quite a variation in how we organize the Qi field within certain parameters. And different tribes within us get sort of attached to our way. And organizing the Qi field is in a sense a ritual invocation. And so repetition and such becomes very common to open a powerful session in a way that's familiar and people can land in good and anchor. And yet there's many ways to do it. And I noticed when I was in Mexico, they did a lot of body relaxation. They'll do long body scans as part of the phrase that we have, relaxing the entire body and expanding out into the infinite. They'll take that word relaxing the entire body and they make it 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And that's beautiful. And in many cases it's needed, especially in maybe a stress reduction class or something like that. But with a group of people like ourselves that know how to key our body and know how to shift into our alignment very quickly, it may not be what we want in that moment, or it may not be right in alignment with the purpose of a different kind of class. It was very much like a guided meditation. And so I think it's wise for us to think into what we're doing with our Qi field organizations and find our own personal pattern that has resonance with the legacy. The legacy of Zen and Qigong is a huge portion of the power of what we're doing, and why our chi field is so valuable and so quick to bring about healings and other sorts of transformations. This cumulative nature of our chi field is built upon all the healings at the hospital, all the healings that have happened for each of you, all of the inspiration, all of this cumulative activities of each of us are alive in this field. And so we don't want to just be random and pop off with whatever we're inspired at in that moment, which a creative kind of person like me has a tendency to sort of go creative and just spontaneously move with my words out of the field. And while that sometimes can be pretty awesome, I watch myself with that. I like to be creative within a certain structure. And I like to look at what the structure is that has really built the legacy of the power in our chi field. And so looking at what is that essential skeleton or that essential structure of our chi field setting. And you can start with the 8 verses, and then I can look at the way Ming Tong has done his modifications, and look at the way some of the other Zen and Qigong teachers are offering their chi field settings, some of the other teachers that have evolved out of Dr. Pang. And there's an astonishing variety, and yet there's the consistency of also the starting with coming home to the body. Starting with knowing where we are here and now in this moment. So being present, taking your students and anchoring them in this moment. Okay, I'm going to speak most often about students because I assume the greatest variety of you are teachers. It's just as applicable in setting a chi field for a business meeting or for a guided walk in the woods or something else. We just modify our words for those people to receive it better. But so we take people into coming home, coming into their alignment. And most people will start with, head touches sky, feet stand on earth. I mean, how much more beautiful is that? Being grounded, touching the infinite potential, being alive in this moment of the world that's alive right now. And then they, and often posture will often set people's posture. We think of that sometimes as happening before the chi field setting, but it's really, there aren't boundaries in these things. And posture and bringing people into an internal alignment and into an internal awareness of where their chin is or where their pelvis is bringing them into an embodied state. It's bringing them into this moment in their body. And so that kind of here and now is like super important. We want to know where we start from. And if it's possible, if you have the time, some stillness in there so that also we can come to a still point so that we start fresh. We want to quiet the mind, get the mind out of the past and the future, quiet the mind, get the mind into the still point. And hopefully there's the beautiful line. We have no distracting thoughts, Niyan Buchi, in there. And then the heart is clear like a crystalline water, just like clear water on a pond. So this clarity, this calmness of the emotions, this serenity is sort of coming into the still point. And to me, this is all sort of coming home, getting people to stop what they're doing, be here now, come into a fresh moment. Okay. Before I continue, with points of chief field organizing, I want to say I had this really powerful time in Mexico. I was just finding myself in a whole new dimension, and the students were just drawing out of me a whole sort of new level of teachings for myself. And I came back, and it's normally my habit to, as I wake up, to sort of go through the 8 verses, and not literally like repeating them, but with the ideas of the 8 verses. Sometimes I'm in them in Spanish, sometimes in them in English, sometimes in them in Chinese words, but I just kind of let all that roll out in my mind. And a couple of days after I was in Mexico, it just was it was just richer than it had ever been before. And I wrote this poem that I think I'll read to you now, because it's about the still point. And it came out of that awakening to state where I was playing with the 8 verses. So, and if you want, I can put a link to the poem in the chat. So I called it Today's Potential. Here I am. Here is where I belong. One essential drop in an ocean of awe, an ocean of possibility, an ocean of life. A new day, fresh and eager for my participation. Above and all around me is life in a million expressions. Blue sky and infinitely expanding galaxies. And beneath my 2 feet, a precious planet giving me form, food, and beauty. I can relax. I belong. Opening, I can receive all that I truly am. My rapidly dividing cellular particulars coming alive in their special songs. Countless possibilities unfold before me today. If I release myself from the habits of my days, the habits of my ways, what might be drawn forth from me? What new creation wants to emerge? In this pause before beginning, I find the source for today's gift of life, the reservoir of stillness and respect. I smile from here, and am thankful. The chaff of my discontents and transgressions blow away with a breeze emanating from my gentle breathing. I am drawn into the clarity of my heart's own beating, the melody of today's song waiting to be created. As the pulses and patterns of my body are awakening, I seek to quiet my mind's arousal and control the distractions of thought. I swaddle myself in my morning mantra, turning my attention to the life force that cradles mine. From this still point, my life naturally expands. From this still point, all within me is created. Sourced from harmony, may my day flow freely. Haula, haula, haula.
Paula.
So,
Wonderful. Nice.
Yeah, good. Okay, Stephanie put that link to that if someone anybody wants that to go through that, revisit it. The links in the chat. Thank you, Stephanie. So, okay. So coming home, coming to the still point. Yeah. Then it's about, at that point, we've gotten to a good starting point. And then it's about, in my mind, it's about really dialing in the purpose of integrating the interior and the exterior. And really, the whole way that the chi field is different than group dynamics is its aliveness in the Hunyuan Chi field. It's aliveness in the infinite. It's integration of this enormous potential of the universe and of creation that's alive within each cell of our body. That's something that group dynamics, sort of has as, I mean, the infinite is alive everywhere all the time anyway. But when we focus on it deliberately and engage and merge with it deliberately, a whole different level of activation happens. And that's to me, a huge reason why when we mentally and cognitively is the same word, but when we deliberately invoke this merging and transforming, this Hunhua, to me, that's the root of why Zen and Qigong is so powerful. I've been with many other Qigong teachers, and we practice the beautiful forms, and the impact is very similar in the body. And me, with my perspective, I'm always sort of connecting up with the infinite anyway. However, I noticed that most of the other students are just sort of practicing on a physical and Qi level, and they're in other forms of Qigong. And the results aren't as quick or as fast. They may happen, and yet there's sort of a different perspective, and many other teachers shy away from speaking about anything that might be anywhere close to being labeled spiritual. And unfortunately, the infinite has this bad rap of being spiritual. I mean, the infinite is. I mean, it's like, let's get over it. There's such power in the universe that created the universe. We don't have to give it a holy name to realize that it's there and active. So, a lot of Qigong teachers still just stick with the energy and stick with the body movements. And they want you to discover that larger field of energy on your own, and they won't guide that process. But we do guide that process. And we guide it in a secular way, and we guide it in a way that's science, that Zen and Qigong science, and that recognizes that, there is something alive in the universe giving everything its oomph, its vitality. So this merging and transforming, this Hunhua state, we label and we bring our students into a connection with it at the level of their cognitive stuff by hearing our words about expanding in and drawing back out, moving to each horizon, expanding in all directions, and then going inward to our words may be very simple about going inward, or they may, go into each organ system, or you may talk about going down as deep as their bone marrow, or different ways you can do it, but they're taking them deep inside so that their mind opens outward and connects, and then their mind opens inward and connects. And then we're asking that for the same sort of thing to happen with their hearts as well. And we're asking for their essential body energy to connect. So we're working on all dimensions of the human being And we're working on all dimensions of the life energy all around us, the form and flow back and forth and the formless. I mean, it's like we're with these simple invocations of expanding to the horizon and coming back deep inside, and doing that connection a few times, whether it's in each direction, building a real body map frame of reference of where I am in the world, like Ming Tong does, or simply saying expanding in all directions and then coming back to no distracting thoughts, or be respectful, or feeling a quiet, calm heart, like the 8 verses does. So we can find our own way within that structure, but it's really important, I feel, to keep that structure because it's so well, it's profound. Okay, I guess that's good. It works. It works. You know, any group we go to, whether it's doing a walk in the woods, a guided walk in the woods, or a church service, or a business meeting, any good leader will speak to, well, here we are today, and we're here for this purpose. Let's begin. So there's some variation of that in every initiation of a group. And we're doing that too. Here we are today, but then we're saying, and look, we're alive within the context of infinite possibility, and we're open to infinite possibility. And then we want to go to, and what's the purpose of this? Why? Why are we doing this? And remembering that the pure source energy is neutral. It's unconditional. It's not grabbing. It doesn't need anything. It's neutral. You know, that, I mean, unconditional and neutral, the neutrality of it is the power of it. It's available for everything and everybody in every way, and it can move in any direction. But what moves it? What moves it is our purpose, the purpose we give to that energy, our heart's desire, the motivation that we bring to something. And that's going on within any creative activity, as well as our body healing process. So we want to investigate, or ask our students to investigate what is their purpose? What is their purpose being here in this class today? What are they looking for? And in some simple way, just offering a moment for them to say in their hearts, you know, I'm here to heal. I'm here to relax. I'm here to follow my doctor's orders. You know, I'm here to investigate this. And then, so we lift up some opportunity for them to claim their purpose. And then I like to always unite the individual with the group, because this is a huge part of, also part of the power of this energy Qigong Qi field, is that it's collective. I talked about it being cumulative through history, but it's also a huge other part of it is that it's collective. We don't do this alone, or it's not just a story of us and the infinite. You know, us isn't a singular thing. I mean, we're not a singular story. We're merged with everything, and we don't ever even release from merging. If we release from one merging, we go into another. I mean, when we release from merging here together with this group this morning, not morning for me, we're going to merge back into whatever, our family or our evening or our sleeping. You know, we're never alone. And so that this group story that's in our class, it's like, okay, so when I guide, he's like, okay, we're here in we're recognizing our particular purpose. And then we're noticing that we're in a group of people with purpose. And we have an overarching purpose. And the overarching purpose of Zen and Qigong is, to cultivate our wisdom, and it potentiates our healing process. But this upgrading of humanity is so valuable that our whole field contains, this desire to upgrade humanity. And not just humanity. I mean, Dr. Pang's working on fields of grain and animals and other things. It's like all of life, looking for how can we upgrade and pull the Hunyuan Ming Tong free-flowing energy into all life. So, we align with this bigger purpose, which connects us up powerfully with even a larger amplification of potential and a larger story. And so we have the connection with the infinite, the connection with our purpose, the connection with the larger story. And at some point, I think it's important and may not be in your initial chi field settings, but sometimes later you might be discussing the chi field and helping people understand on a cognitive level the power of this. Helping people realize that this is all happening without any limitation to time or space. And because most of us live so much in the relative world where we discern our lives by times and particular locations, to get it that this is all happening non-linearly, non-local is cool. It's pretty cool. Okay, and then just connecting again, usually another expansion, another interior, and ending in this harmonized reframing of the common potential that we have of being harmonized with the Hunyuan Qi. So there's many ways of wording things, and the other thing to realize is that as you are creating your particular chi field setting for your group and your style, is to work with the energy of ritual and work with the energy of repetition. And there's ways of keeping a basic structure to your organizing of the field and your building of it, but there's also you can keep working it. Don't get stuck in a pattern, but use a pattern. This is what I'm trying to say. One of the things I watched is that many people get used to the pattern of lift you up, port you down, or whatever they're practicing, and they do it in a certain way, and they get stuck in that way. And it's relaxing, and it's gotten them to a certain place, but it's pretty rote, and they're not asking questions, and they're not inquiring into it. They're sort of following along a video or an audio, and it's all good and well. But except for it's not reaching its potential, because you have to remember Zen and Qigong is a science, and a science you need inquiry and questions and testing and results, and that's what Dr. Pang is alive in the science of this human technology. And I really would like to see that level of inquiry that comes with that approach to our tradition. It comes from the bottom of our tradition up, but I think a lot of us lose it, and we just follow our teachers in a really rote way. But, then again, you're here listening to this, and so maybe you're not in that category. But this inquiry and aliveness. So even though we create a pattern and use it in a structured way and repeat it, we also want to keep investigating it and having inquiry and the times when we have a longer time to organize the chi field, to try some other things or expand out in a certain direction and see what might come, see what might come. Where are we? Oh, okay. That took, just checking my time here. Amir, you want me to complete in 15 minutes? Is that right?
Yes, 15, 20 minutes, and it's up to you. We have lots of time, and then end with a practice if you like. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Hopefully everything else I was going to say is coming
No,
through
no, please.
transmission.
Yeah, keep on going.
Keep on going.
Love to hear you talk. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, we all know how to practice. Yeah. Okay. Um, okay, let me just look here at my notes. One of the things that I spoke about earlier that I want to play with, and I really had a rich week and wrote a lot of things, and I have played with the idea of writing a book about the power of the chi field and organizing it for a long, long time. I mean, I originally was going to write it with Roger Yanka, and then I was going to write it with Ming Tong, and maybe I'm going to write it with myself now. But the and I was writing a lot of stories about how I learned and cultivated a lot of these ideas through my teaching in the prisons. And one of those is getting your students to take responsibility for the chi field, which is a piece of what I did at the beginning when I asked you all to support me in this process. It's like spreading out the responsibility for the cultivation of the field and the maintenance of the field. So it's not just you as a leader guiding this group of people along, it's the whole group is moving together collectively. And so I want to drop that idea in to look for ways to give your students responsibility for the chi field. I'll tell one of the prison stories. So we would practice in a circle, and the chi field in the prison I was teaching in, Folsom Prison, we had started with another form called Tai Chi Cha long before I had gotten connected with Zen and Qigong. And so the chi field was strongly embedded with that form. And so what I did is I started to learn more about Zen and Qigong. I just kept applying the chi field principles and kept the form the same. So I enriched the dynamic of that particular form with all the theory and teachings that I was learning with the Zen and Qigong. But I didn't change to lift you up, put you down. I just kept that form and applied the theory. And it's all good for that too. So we would practice in a circle. And because of the nature of things, I often had men that were coming in late, and because they were working and they didn't get off work at the time that the class started. So I would need to, and I was the only one that was allowed the keys. So I would need to go to the gate and let them in. And I usually taught alone. I didn't have an assistant at that time. So I'd have to leave the circle, and I'd ask them to keep practicing. And I would go and I'd come back and I noticed, they were all out of sync, or some of them had started talking to each other, or something was going on by the time I got back to the circle with the new person. And I was like, okay, I got to do something about this. And so I talked to them about and explained to them what I was noticing. And they said, they were, sure, we understand that's what we're doing, but you're not here. You're the one that's in charge, and you're the one that's guiding us. We're all following you. What can we do when you leave? And it was like, hey, you can keep practicing. You can take responsibility for this dynamic too. And is it all about me? Yes and no, it's not all about me. It's all about you. It's us practicing. And each of you know, and then there's 3 or 4 of you here in the circle that really know, because I always had a group of senior teachers that were very keen on and eager to support. I said, if you're new, all you need to do is follow, these different people, or these different people need to just step up and say, okay, stay with me, we're going to keep it together. So then we practiced for a while of me leaving the circle and how they could maintain the same force, the same energetic pulse that was going on, and stay happy and stay engaged. And they didn't let the chi leave with me, that they kept the chi and owned it themselves and kept the synergy happening. And so, by experimenting and having me do that, and then a few weeks later, there would, quickly a test would come, and I'd see if they remembered. And, I built it so that through their experience, they knew that they owned the chi field and that they could keep it going, and it didn't matter whether I was there or not. And then we were able to transition where the chaplains in the chapel in the prison would allow them to practice if I couldn't come in. And so then they started practicing when I couldn't come in. And that was really sweet. That was really good. So teaching my students to hold the responsibility themselves and not punt it to me all the time was really important for their development and for the cultivation of our whole chi field. And then I also played with messing with them. I'd get them all going in a circle, all nice synchronization. I'd say, okay, now this is test time. Can you hold it? Can you maintain? And then I go around and I, dance goofy, or I come up behind them, or I do whatever and just irritate the field. And they, when we would talk about it, and then they'd have to keep up the practice. And then we'd stop and we'd talk about it, and they'd talk about how they could feel that irritating energy. And, some of them let it bug them enough that they quit and didn't like it. And others overcame it and said, hey, all right, I'm in charge of my energy field. I'm in charge of how I'm going. And so they learned how to, what I was playing with is how to maintain that chi relationship despite, a guard being in your face or another inmate provoking you. And it worked really, it was one of those kind of good learning lessons in the classroom. And I don't know that you necessarily need to do that kind of thing in a hospital setting, classroom, or wherever you're teaching at the Buddhist temple or something. But it worked well for me when I was teaching inside. And I don't know, another thing since I'm talking about the prison, I'm going to not miss most everything that I've talked about here, that I thought I'd say anyway. One of the beautiful things that I want to sort of invite everyone here to open their hearts to, that I worked on in cultivating our chi field in the prison classes. I taught in Old Folsom and New Folsom prisons for 13 years. And it was my big path of cultivation. I had the big vision of, I really was irritated by the way the prison system sort of purposely trashes people's souls. It's at least in California. I know there's more enlightened ways in other countries, but in California, in Texas, it's kind of the worst of the worst. Well, maybe Mexico City's worse, but anyway, who cares who's worse? It's a soul-crushing experience here. And we don't change things by the energy that created them. We change things by moving things to a new paradigm, which is a piece of what we're doing with all of our practice. We're moving ourselves into the paradigm of non-local infinite possibility, Hunyuan Shi. I mean, that's the point of our Qi field setting, to move ourselves into that paradigm, to move ourselves into an intimate relationship with the infinite. And so I was looking at, well, what in the world could possibly change the prison system? Because it's totally, all the surrounding society is like adding really positive, I mean, they're using their positive force of rejection. I mean, their society sends all this rejection energy and banishment energy to the prisons. And in our own bodies, if we had a tumor or had something really distressing going on, would we, I mean, sometimes we do, but it's not the healing thing to do to banish that part of our body or to banish any part of our body of society. It's not going to bring healing. I mean, it's only going to bring more distress and more isolation. And isolation isn't going to be what heals anything. It's going to be its hunhua. It's merging and transforming with the source. So it's like, how do I shift my thinking into where's the potential line? I would be in Ming Tong's teachings, and I would just go. He would teaching about how to heal the body, and I'd just switch him into how to heal the body of society in relationship to the prisons. If the prisons is the illness. So I was, seeking, and I realized, okay, the purpose needs to change. If the purpose could change from one of banishment and punishment to healing and peace, if we could change the purpose, the whole energy dynamic would change. And so I began speaking with the man about, in my Qi field settings or in my closings, I'd talk about may this cultivation, may this practice bring benefit to, our entire prison system and bring it into a state of healing and peace, and change the purpose to that. And, I just began to have more and more courage to speak out loud about my desire for healing of the whole prison system as I gained confidence with my own practice. And we took it more and more and more out into, we would do these concentric circles from it's like, healing happens from the inside, right? I mean, it's all an inside job, you can say something. So we were the inside. My students with in the middle of the chapel, in the middle of the prison yard, in the middle of the worst prison system, or one of the worst, we were pumping out, we were pulsating and hunhuaing from the very core of the institution. And so I kept gently and in small ways, without being too out there, bringing the men into that realization that what they were doing was prophetic in many ways. They were from the inside out on that energetic level. It wasn't all about them and their own healing. We were doing something bigger. And as I had the courage to speak louder and to talk more about the expansion of this energy, and I'd used them, I said, every nook and cranny of this place, when we would be doing something akin to La Chi, we would just like, okay, now you guys visualize every nook and cranny of this place. Fill it with light, fill it with this high quality energy that you've been cultivating in class. And we would, just do what we could to spread this high quality energy around. And I would work with the men to try out little experiments as they had the courage out in the yard or with their celly to play with releasing this energy into the environment. And at one point we ended up having I had several different classes and stuff. One time we ended up having just a small group of men that we would, every week we'd meet and we'd do different guided meditations that the men would create to heal the prison system. And, one of the reasons I finished in this one yard was because all of a sudden things started changing and they all got moved to lower level institutions. It was a level 4. It was the highest, most severe punishment that I was teaching in. And they were all getting downgraded and sent out to other places. And there was another small shifts that were going on that it was like, oh, maybe we did have some effect. Maybe our efforts were, worked. I mean, it's silly but we always want to take credit and see the cause and a direct line of cause and effect. But it really wasn't, that discernible. But I had hopes that we were changing the paradigm and we were contributing to the ongoing story of healing in part of our most contracted and most abandoned, isolated segment of our society. So I guess since I skipped my whole practice section with all my talking, I'd like to finish with a moment of La Chi for this cause of mine that I hope resonates in your hearts as well. And let's organize a Chi field for a new paradigm. I mean, a new paradigm for our prison system and uplifting of this massive Chi blockage in our society, and see if we can't do a few moments of La Chi to add to that transformation potential. So finding our feet on the ground and ourselves in beautiful posture, and knowing it is so, that our Chi field is well organized and powerful because we've spent 2 hours talking about it, feeling it deep inside ourselves. Bring an image of incarceration, or a prison, the beautiful beings that are inside, and the potential transformation that is for their lives, and the potential transformation that it would be for our society if our prisons were institutions of healing and peace. But their true purpose was to cultivate the individual potential. And when they were released into the world, they were released into their potential. And all of society would be uplifted with the transformation process that was happening within those incarcerated and within the prison system itself. That the pure source energy might flow freely and abundantly. And the system would find a natural way to open to change, open to transformation, and receive this high quality energy that we give it in this moment, and that we set up that all moments, in all times, this potential is activated. bringing to mind any particular person that you know that's influenced by a system of incarceration, giving them an extra gift of your loving attention right now, knowing that they too are seeds in this process, seeds of transformation. And through your attention to them in a holographic way, in this cumulative, collective way, this energy passes from them as a representative to the wholeness of all those incarcerated, all those inside that system, or potentially in it or beyond it. That these gifts of Zen and Qigong are made available on all levels and all dimensions. And together we bring our hands to our navel, connecting with our own infinite resources, our own infinite selves. Feeling our own pure potential for this wonderful year ahead of us. May we all be released from our blockages, our own internal prisons. May we all fly freely into our future, into the biggest or the most free-flowing vision of ourselves that is there in our destiny. Haola, haola, haola. Thank you.
Allah, beautiful.
Well, I did a little segue into my prison work, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good teaching, Guma. I can tell you you're a tremendous teacher, and I would really urge you to publish your book. In this day and age, it's so easy through Amazon, self-publishing, and I think for the benefit of all. Yeah, just tremendous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Thank
can
you.
unmute everyone. If you like, you can thank Teacher Guma. And,
Thank you, Guma. Great to see you.
Thank you, Guma. Publish your book. Thank
yeah,
you.
publish your book.
Thank you, Guma.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Much
love to you,
Guma. Pray.
Gracias. Gracias, all my friends.
Yes, thank you. Good to see everyone. Okay,
Just,
take care, everyone. Thank you so much, Teacher Guma.
you're
Such a
welcome.
joy to see you.
you.
Thank you for your teaching. Take
Bye,
care,
everybody.
everyone.
Forward to
All the
hearing
best.
more.